Welcome back. Please don't forget to subscribe and follow for new updates. Looking at examples, we can have these two examples. For example, example 1 will say, given that sine theta is 3 out of 5. First extract that, given that sine theta is 3 out of 5. What does this mean? That sine theta is equivalent to 3 out of 5. But we need to recall that we have our simple formula which says, so Katoa given as sine of an angle theta is opposite over hypotenuse. So this is our opposite, yeah? And this is our hypotenuse. So we can now look at that as a simple way of understanding that if this was a right angle triangle, having our angle theta, we say the side opposite the angle is going to be here. So this is our opposite, which is 3 units. And then down, we look at hypotenuse, and we say the hypotenuse is the longer side. So the hypotenuse is 5. Recalling Pythagoras theorem, which says that a squared plus b squared gives us c squared. That means that a squared plus 3 squared must give us a 5 squared, making a squared equivalent to a 25 minus a 9. So our a squared is equivalent to a 16. So we can get the square root and get the square root inside. So we shall have a. We need it will be plus or minus, and the value is going to be a 4. So we know that here we are going to have our 4. So after knowing that that is the value that is missing there, it means we can now have the adjacent. The adjacent is equivalent to 4. The opposite is equivalent to 3, and the hypotenuse is equivalent to 5. And that is the first thing I've noticed. Then they tell me find the value of cos theta and tan theta. Given that, so they want me to get values of cos theta, they want me to get values, and tan what? Tan theta. But they told me that given that theta lies between 90 and 180 degrees. So I need to analyze what is taking place between 90 and 180 degrees. That is when I recall my simple quadrant, knowing that we said all student teachers came. And so if all student teachers came, knowing there is an angle of 0, 90 here, 180. So I'm interested in this place. What happens in this place? I recall saying that in the second quadrant, sine is positive. Indeed it is, that is why we have a positive value. And then we also say that cos will now be negative and the tangent will also be negative. So after looking at those, I can now say that my cos of an angle this time will be negative, but I know that from Sokatoa it is always adjacent out of the hypotenuse. So my cos of the angle will be negative. My adjacent is a 4 out of my hypotenuse, which is a 5. So that becomes the value of cos theta. I furthermore continue to get the value of tan theta, and I will say tan theta. Recall we said tan is also negative in this second quadrant. So it will be my negative, and from Sokatoa tan is opposite over the adjacent. So it will be negative, the opposite, out of my adjacent. And so my tan theta will be a negative value, but my opposite is a 3. And the adjacent is a 4. And the adjacent is a 4. This means that those will be the values of tan and cos theta as required in our very first example. We can continue and look at example 2 very fast, being that we are given that the value of tan is negative 12. The value of tan is given as negative 12. Sorry, negative 5 out of 12. And they say theta is reflex. Theta is reflex, that one in there, reflex. Does bring me to something I have to talk about. We can have angles we are going to look at. We are going to have the acute angles, We shall have the obtuse angles, and then if that is the spelling, obtuse angles, and then we shall also have reflex. So, for these angles, for acute, we shall concentrate at angles less than 90 degrees. Acute angles are less than 90 degrees. The obtuse angles are between 90 degrees to 180 degrees. Those will be called obtuse. Then the reflex will be ranging from 180 degrees to 360 degrees. Angles in this form will be termed to be like that. So what does this mean? Acute angles are in the first quadrant. Acute angles lie in the first quadrant. Why? They are less than 90 degrees. For instance, if we have this as our symbol circle, 0, 90, so they will be in here because they are between 0 and 90 degrees. Then we go to the obtuse. I've said they are between 90 and 180. This is 90 and this is 180. So they will lie within this territory here. They will lie there. And then we shall have the reflex angles. They are between these ones, you see they are in the second. These ones are between 180 and 360. So this is 270 and this is 360. So reflex angles are here. They are in the third and in the fourth quadrant. So reflex angles are in the third and the fourth quadrant. That should be in your mind. That should be at the back of your head. You should be able to understand that. You should be able to relate with that. So that was something I needed you to understand and to read before we proceed with our last example. We have been told that given that tan is negative 5 out of 12. So this means that my value of tan theta is negative 5 out of 12. When I see such numbers in the beginning, I can immediately get the missing angle. And how am I going to get the missing side of the triangle? Knowing that this is theta, and tan takes on opposite, which is a negative 5, out of the adjacent, which is going to be 12. So I can use that to get my hypotenuse, knowing that a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared. So negative 5 squared plus 12 squared must give us c squared. So when I square a negative, I get a positive. Negative 5 squared is the same as negative 5 times negative 5, which will be a positive 25. Then plus 12 squared is the same as 144. So it's equivalent to c squared. So when we add 25 plus 144, we get 169. And it is equivalent to c squared. We get the root. And so the value of c is going to be a plus or negative 13. It will be a plus or minus 13. So I can know that the value here, the missing value at the hypotenuse is a 13. So I've got the opposite, and I can call my opposite 5. I've got the adjacent, and we can call it 12, and I've got the hypotenuse, and we can call it 13. So I come to my question, and they tell me that theta is reflex. So if theta is reflex, what does this mean? It means that the value of theta lies in the third quadrant. And furthermore, I come and look at the value of tan, seeing tan being negative. So I ask myself a simple question. If we have a quadrant in this form, and we've seen that theta is reflex, so if it is reflex, it is in the third and in the fourth quadrant. So if it is in the third and in the fourth, and we know that all student teachers came, in the third tan is positive, and in the fourth tan is negative, because it is only cos that is positive. So what does this mean? It means that since tan is negative in our question, and it is reflex, that means the value is in the fourth quadrant, because that is the only way we are seeing a reflex angle coming out with a tangent being negative. It is only in the fourth quadrant. So after knowing that it is in the fourth quadrant, I now know I'm dealing with the fourth I'm in the fourth quadrant. So I'm going to get the value of cos theta first, knowing that cos theta, what happens in the fourth quadrant, cos must be positive. So cos theta is going to be, when I recall from our SOHCAHTOA, cos is adjacent over hypotenuse. So cos theta will be adjacent out of the hypotenuse. So my cos theta in this case is going to be our adjacent, as we've seen the adjacent is 12, and our hypotenuse is 13 in this case. But we've said the value of cos is going to be positive in this scenario. So we further continue and look for the value of sine, knowing that sine theta is given as, this is sine which is opposite. But in the fourth quadrant, sine must be negative, which is opposite over the hypotenuse. So sine theta is going to be, my opposite is going to be a negative value, but my opposite is a 5 out of the hypotenuse, which is a 13. So that will be the value there. But I'm being told to get cos theta plus sine theta. And this will be the same as 12 out of 13 plus negative 5 out of 13. From simple mathematics, 13 and 13 are the LCM. So I'll deal with what is at the top, which is 12 minus 5. And so this will give us an answer as 7 out of 13. And that will be the value of cos theta plus sine theta.